All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. If you are returning, which I'm assuming you are, given the kind of personal nature of this one, I don't know if anybody's going to be really interested in hearing what I have to say right now, but I'm feeling kind of prompted by the Holy Spirit to speak, so that's what's going on here. But if you are new to my channel, hello, welcome. My name is Julie. On this channel, I tend to kind of share and document my journey into and through the Christian faith, just things that I've been learning, studying, researching, getting clarity on, reflections, observations, all that good stuff. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, feel free to stick around. I got a comment the other day on my journey to Catholicism video of someone asking how I'm doing now. And so I figured, okay, if one person wants to know, then I'm happy to share, because I think I've been going through some things, per usual, that I have a feeling you might be able to relate to. Okay, so where I've just been regarding faith and my explorations, and the last video I posted, I was talking about exploring the East, exploring Eastern Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy. I have done that for the last 2 months or so, and I had various kind of, I don't want to say conclusions, but reflections, I would say, about that led me back to Roman Catholicism. No matter what I do, it seems like I cannot run away from the Catholic Church. So with that being said, let me just open a window real quick. It's getting a little bit warm in here. I was afraid of the wasp coming in, but you know what? I feel like he's flown away. So yeah, just embracing Catholic practices again this Lent has been so incredibly fruitful for me. I just feel such a kind of a love expanding in my heart when I follow this path. I feel very close to Christ. I feel a love for Mary kind of blossoming internally that is very interesting, because her love really is very maternal, and I think that she's very patient, because obviously we know a lot of Christians don't really give Mary the respect that she really deserves from us. And just kind of praying the rosary and being open to her, I've had some really interesting moments where it's very obvious that she is interceding, and there's just this feminine, maternal feel to her that is hard to describe. But if you have a devotion to Mary, or you pray the rosary and you've kind of opened your heart to her, then I think you understand what I mean. Anyway, yeah, a little example is I was thrifting the other day. I went to the Goodwill here in my new city for the first time, and it was awesome. And I was trying on some clothes that I found, and when I was done, for some reason, I just had the instinct to thank Mary, which I usually don't. I usually thank God directly, but for some reason I was like, thank you, Mary. This was great. And I left my cart outside, and I was bringing my stuff back to the cart. I placed it in the cart. I looked up where I had left it, and there she was, a little figurine of Mary right there. So that was just kind of cool. I have her here on my mantle. I'll show you in a little bit. But things like that where, I don't know, there's just these little moments of confirmation that, I mean, there's been a lot of blessings in my life lately that I kind of haven't known how to feel about, in a way, which sounds really weird, because I think we all want to be blessed by God and to have our heart's desires fulfilled, but when he actually starts doing that, it might kind of catch you off guard. And if you come from a background like I do, where a lot of my life was a struggle and there was a lot of challenges and more despair and stress and anxiety than not. So when things are going really well, and they're going well in a way where I haven't really done anything different necessarily, except for just devoting more of myself to God and feeling kind of like madly in love with Christ, honestly. And that's what compels me towards continuing on this path. I mean, there's just been a lot of moments and things, physical things that have come about that have been miraculous. and could have only been God. And he's treating me in a way where it's beyond what I think that I deserve. So when these blessings have come about, I almost can't fully feel them. And then when it sinks in, there's this weird mixture of thank you, but why? You know? And there's a tenderness to this clarity that he's giving me lately. And I really don't feel like I would have gotten to this heart posture if I didn't turn myself back towards Catholicism. Because even last week, I went back to the Latin Mass. I hadn't gone in like a month because I was confused about how to think about the Catholic Church. And I've been praying every day on the Hallow app. Shout out Hallow app. If you are watching this in real time, I highly recommend joining the Lent 40 challenge. It's just a couple minutes every day of prayer and encouragement, and it's just, honestly, it's so good. So anyway, I've been doing that, and I decided to go back to the Latin Mass. And this was really interesting because it was the first Sunday in Lent. I've never gone to Mass during Lent, so this is just kind of interesting and cool. But the sun was like shining through the stained glass. We're just coming into spring. There's this kind of element of almost somberness or solemnness to the Mass during Lent, I feel like. But the homily, as always, this priest at my local parish is just so on point. I don't know, there's some people that are just so obviously living out their calling and their gift, and he's one of those people, and I find that really inspiring. But this was the first time, and this is kind of big, because if you've been following my story, you know that what has convinced me of the Eucharist is the fact that normally I get such an intense physical reaction in front of the Eucharist. However, you might be kind of happy to hear, because I was happy to experience, this was the first time ever in my life where I was in the presence of the Eucharist at this Latin Mass, and I actually felt a little bit of joy. I felt like a little bubbling up of joy. It was like effervescent and fizzy and bubbly. It was really interesting. And I got this little burst of joy because first it was prompted by the sensation, and once I realized that I wasn't sweating and freaking out and panicking, but I actually felt a little bit of joy, that was obviously kind of exciting and cool. And then I had the thought of, well, yeah, I have to wait a little bit, but what is another year in comparison to the rest of my life? The fact that I'm even sitting here with the background that I have, with the level of sin that I lived in, and I have the opportunity to receive him throughout the rest of my life. I just have a year to wait. It's like, what's a year in the grand scheme of things when you have been rescued out of the pits of hell by Almighty God himself? Like, what's another year, right? So I had that realization, and it brought me a lot of joy because there's a beauty in this period of time of longing and wanting to be closer to him in that way and experiencing how true it really is. The Latin Mass is something that I think even if I was yet to know Christ, I would absolutely love just the same, because I think it's objectively beautiful. I think it's one of the last places on earth that you can go and things are just truly good and pure. And I was struck by the fact of looking around at all these beautiful people around me. And it's a university parish, actually, so there's quite a few young people there. And I think it's really cool just to see them out on a Sunday, you know, the girls wearing skirts and veils and the men dressed up pretty nice. And it strikes me because I'm like, every single, and also, by the way, the priest's homily this past Sunday was about strengthening yourself against lust of the flesh, lust towards food, lust towards greed. And so anyway, it was just, there's something about his homily and just looking around at everybody and realizing everyone here who's an adult is battling the same things, in the sense that we're all fighting against sin. We're all fighting against temptation. There might be obviously some variations in what temptations you specifically have, but every single person here is trying to be good. And that in itself is beautiful. And there's something to be said for that in a world, in a culture that we have lost meaning. We have lost belief. The default secular culture doesn't believe in anything except maybe science and politics and fighting with each other and just this empty materialism, but it doesn't have this transcendent higher belief connecting us all together anymore. So just looking around at these young people, older people, families, everybody out on a Sunday trying to be good, the parents who are exposing their children to this, they're planting that seed, the young college kids who are there when they could have been partying the night before, hungover in bed today, but they're at the Latin Mass. I'm like, what? That's just, it reminded me of the quote that C.S. Lewis said. This is kind of paraphrased, but man doesn't know how bad he is until he's tried very hard to be good. And that's been something that I've been kind of encountering lately, of just, I think in this stage of life where I'm not actively dating, but people come across my sphere, I guess, and I'm open, obviously, because I do think I'm being called to marriage at some point. So if somebody comes across my path and they seem like they have potential, I'll give them a chance, right? And it's very interesting to approach dating from this perspective where you are not doing so from a place of lust. Whereas in secular culture, that's a part of dating and getting to know someone, and thinking about marriage, I guess, is getting physical. And whereas from a Christian perspective, that's off the table, and you're really trying to get to know this other person in a pure way. And I think it's just really interesting psychologically, because if you're attracted to this other person physically, you have to make effort to not either allow it to go there or to take it there, or even let your mind go there in a way. And it's not to say that that is bad. I've touched on that in my previous videos, that our sexuality is not a bad thing. It has a purpose, and God designed it to be within marriage because that's where it's most beautiful and true and purposeful. So outside of that, you just don't want to mix that in, especially because it will cloud your judgment. So even outside of the faith perspective, you just want to guard yourself from being taken by lust in dating, for example. So that's something that is just brought more to my attention when I'm in these situations, and that's why I think God orchestrates them perfectly. Because otherwise, I don't know, I would kind of forget what that's like for people, and I would kind of be like, oh yeah, sounds kind of hard, but whatever. If you're not yourself kind of reminded of what it's like to try to be good. For example, when sometimes I think the devil especially wants to pull you away from God. And there's other things for me that have come to light lately of just, I don't know, worldliness, and the way pride can be so sneaky and so subtle, and selfishness and greed that comes out of scarcity. I mean, there's so many different things that we can place at the foot of the cross and invite God to work on in us, if only we are willing to acknowledge that and to be aware of that. I notice when I'm praying the rosary and I get to the Fatima prayer, "Oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those most in need of thy mercy." Up until this point, when I would pray that prayer, I would think of all the people, my family and friends, who I would love to see in Christ one day that are not yet. And I know that they're struggling and really going through it. So whenever I would pray that prayer as a part of the rosary, I would think of my family and friends and people that I know that aren't in Christ, right? Only recently, when I have been praying that prayer, do I think of myself. Those most in need of thy mercy. That's me. I was like, oh, no, that's actually me. So it's like little things like that that just kind of, I don't know, it brings you down to earth, it humbles you, and he knows you better than you know yourself. And so it's gradual, but when you're ready, these things will kind of come into your awareness, and then you're able to kind of work on it in tandem, and it's really cool. So anyways, I thought that was just kind of interesting, but more than that, since I've been just back on this Catholic path and embracing the fact that, you know what, I think I'm just a Roman Catholic at heart. I don't know. I don't know. It's just what it is. Ever since I've been embracing that, there's been an abundance of blessings falling upon me that could only be God. Because, okay, for example, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on this channel before, but I turned 29 this year and I still don't have my driver's license. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. I lived in cities for most of my 20s up until this point, so I was able to get away with it. I had a bit of a fear of driving, so that kind of didn't help. And I never really had the money to go through the process of getting lessons, getting a car. That was always a huge hurdle for me of how am I even going to push past this fear when I don't have the resources to acquire a vehicle to drive. So there was this huge barrier that I've just I don't know, gotten used to over the course of this last decade. And it's made me kind of a weirdo because in American culture, everybody drives and that's normal. And if you don't drive, you don't have your license as an adult, it's seen as kind of like weird or why, or I don't know, especially it's a little more challenging if you're living in a rural area or a more suburban area. So yeah, it's always been kind of something that I don't know, it kind of keeps me humble because it makes me feel like a big weirdo, and I always feel like I have to relay that to new people that I meet, and I'm always kind of afraid of their reaction if they're going to make fun of me or something. But I moved here to a relatively suburban area, and I knew, okay, this is the time. I have to conquer this somehow. It's now or never. I don't know. I just really felt like I want to get this done and be past this fear holding me back and all of these things that limit me in my life, limit where I can go and how and whatever. I want to be past that going into this next decade of my life, my 30s, which sounds super crazy to say, my 30s? Okay, so yeah, I want to be past this by the time I turn 30. However, it's not like anything really changed for me financially. So I was like, I don't know. I have no idea how that's going to come about. So long story short, somehow I have been blessed with a car. It just kind of came upon my path and was dropped upon my lap. I did not have to pay for it. I did not have to do anything else for it. I now have a car, and it's not just any car. It's a very nice car, much nicer than I was ever anticipating for myself in these last couple years, especially coming into the faith and kind of having my heart adjusted in terms of, you know, the way that I used to put a very high importance on status and luxury and materials and wealth and all of that stuff. And when I was a teenager, the car that I really wanted was basically this very car that I ended up with. And already it has helped me conquer this fear because I just love the feeling of being in it. I don't know. It's right back there in the garage. And every time I go out to the garage to take out the trash or something, I'm just like, hey, it's weird. So anyway, that has basically been solved. And now it is very realistic for me to plan to get my license by the summer. Because in the state that I'm in right now in West Virginia, you only have 3 months to get your license from when you get your permit anyway. So I'm like, okay, I really don't have any excuses now. And I can't help but feel like that was a gift from God because of how specific it was. Because He doesn't forget the secret little desires of our heart, even if we do. And the way in which He blessed me with it was just like all of a sudden. It was just from like one day to the next, I suddenly had this car. And it didn't require anything of me to have it. So that's not how things work. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not usually how things work. So that's been really interesting and kind of weird. it's things like that, but it's not just the element of material things. Because I have found that these miraculous additions that are genuinely helpful and kind of life changing for me, they are materials, but they do actually make an impact on my life and how I live it out, I guess. So it's not just the materials themselves, but the way in which they have come about, the problems that they solve, and the way in which I did not do anything to seek them out or acquire them. So basically, since I have been here, I took a leap of faith. I left where I was living before. I moved to a brand new state I had never been to. I moved into a house that I had never seen. I know like one person in this state, but I'm far-ish away from my family and my friends. And I don't know. I was just following what God was telling me to do. I felt that He was prompting me to go here. I took 6 months to really discern if that was true. I took the leap. And since I have been here, He has provided for me beyond what I could have thought to expect or ask for. And it is so, I don't know, like I don't know what to make of it, because it couldn't be anything but God. Like, for example, even this house that I'm living in right now, I didn't acquire it through the normal means because I didn't have the means to do the normal thing. I couldn't, oh, I'm gonna rent this house because I have all this money in the bank and a good credit score and everything. No, I completely needed to start over. I needed to get out of my situation, and I didn't have a logical way to do so. And I was praying for months for God to help me, because that was the only way. I had to completely rely on Him that He would do it, because I wasn't able to even rely on myself at that point. So I'm not saying you should put yourself in that position, but if you find yourself in that position, first of all, I know how hard that is, and I get it. I feel you. I understand. But I think He's put me in this position to just be an example to other people, because He knows that I'll speak. And that's what I've actually heard from Him specifically. So the other day, I had went and got some new books, and I went to go sit in my new car. I'm not driving it around yet without a license, don't worry. But I went to go sit in my car afterwards to wait for my friend to come who can legally drive. And it was kind of full circle, because I used to work at Barnes& and Noble a couple of years ago, and it was cool to just go back there and be a customer there and feel like I had a little secret slinking around. I don't know, but it was nice to just be able to do that, because for the last 2 years I haven't really had the means to do kind of extra shopping like that in a way. So it's just, I don't know, it was kind of nice. And sitting there in my car that just fell out of the sky, and I was like, God, do you want me to feel like this? Like, I felt almost like a little bit too fancy, like too, I don't know. I mean, especially because now, I mean, I've been convicted by God of wearing pants for some reason. So like most of the time I'm wearing dresses and skirts these days, and I don't know, like it makes me look, I know that it makes me look a little more dressed up than the average person. So like all these things combined, I just kind of feeling like, I don't know, like I feel a little bit fancy and like too, I don't know the word for it, but I wasn't sure how to feel. I was like, God, is this what you want? Is this right for me to just have these things? Like, I don't understand. And what I felt him respond was, yes, daughter, I want you to get used to this feeling. I'm doing it for a reason, because a wicked generation demands a sign. And I'm using you as an example. I'm like, okay. I mean, can't really argue with that. And a few days or weeks before that, I think I had went to the Divine Liturgy at the Byzantine Catholic Church. And again, I had such a moving experience, and I just had such a strong reaction to the Eucharist. And I know that other people don't necessarily get that reaction. They don't viscerally feel the presence of Jesus Christ in front of the Eucharist, but I do. And so I was asking him, why? Why do you reveal yourself to me? Like I don't really feel like I deserve that, honestly. And what I felt him respond was, because you will speak. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is true. That is true, because I will speak. So basically, what I've been getting from him lately, and I've definitely been able to hear him more clearly because I am trying to spend more time in silence and contemplation and reading scripture and praying the rosary, and writing, journaling. I feel like that really helps just, I don't know, be as clear as a vessel as I possibly can be. That's another reason I did that Whole30 challenge. I wanted to see if eliminating these certain foods would make it easier to hear him. That was pretty much my goal. And I think it kind of did, to be honest, but that's kind of the gist of what I've been getting from him lately of just me being blessed beyond what I could have imagined and asking him why and trying to figure out if it's okay. Am I, does that mean I'm on the right path? I'm doing the right thing? Because I came into Christianity like, okay, I'm ready to pick up my cross and follow you. And if that means suffering for your sake, I'm more than ready and willing to do that. Not only because I believe in him so much and he's completely changed my life, but also probably because I'm used to suffering. I have a kind of melancholic temperament. And yeah, I had a kind of challenging upbringing. If you go back to my testimony, you can hear a little bit more about that. But in summary, both of my parents were alcoholics. My dad died of a heroin overdose when I was a teenager. I got kicked out of high school. I kind of had to take the hard road. My family didn't help me for many years when I was on my own because they were afraid I was going to go down the wrong path, I guess. I'm not really sure. Everything is all good with that now, but I felt very alone in the world throughout most of my 20s. I was always very, very stressed about money and making ends meet because for the last, I don't know, at least 7 something years, I've been self-employed. I've been an entrepreneur, running businesses, living in New York City, trying to make very expensive rent without a stable income. I went through a lot. I thought that I was bipolar. It got to a point where my mood swings and my depression was so bad I couldn't function normally. I didn't think that would ever change for me. I didn't know how long I would be able to live like that, so I didn't think I would live very long. There was definitely periods of substance myself, although I was never fully addicted to anything. I had periods of time of definitely not being sober and being kind of wrapped up in that world. And I was a sugar baby and I lived through a lot of kind of ups and downs and pain and lessons in that period of time. And I've been in love and I've been heartbroken and all this kind of stuff, right? So I'm kind of used to like feeling sad, I guess, and feeling like things are hard. And I'm used to always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I guess that's kind of made me into a sort of person where I kind of almost don't trust when things are good. I am always waiting for the catch. I'm waiting for something bad to happen so that it all makes sense. And so for the first few months that I was here, I'm living in this beautiful house and I'm able to live here by myself with my 2 little cats who I love dearly. And I don't really have to worry about a whole lot because I don't have any expenses tied to this house. And I don't have to trade anything for that either, which, like, yeah, with my background, that's not really something that I ever thought was possible. Like, there's no such thing as free lunch, right? I don't have to pay anything to live in this beautiful house. There's nothing I have to do. And so that could really only be God. I'm kind of hesitant to like open up about that because I know people might make assumptions or jump to conclusions or think that I'm lying. You could do that if you want to. At the end of the day, nobody's opinion of me matters except for God's. So, yeah, coming into even this situation, I was leaving a situation where I was living with an ex-boyfriend. It was really, really hard. I didn't know how I was going to get out of that situation, but I knew that I had to, but I didn't have the ability to. So I couldn't do things the normal way. And obviously I felt a lot of shame about that because I had put myself in that position and I was naive and I was kind of silly, but at the same time God had a plan because that's where I met him, is there on that property, and I started my channel there, and it's just he had a plan, but I I didn't know how I was gonna move forward. I was afraid to live on my own again too. I was afraid, even though the man I was living with was not my husband, I was afraid to not have that kind of male protection and feel safe in that way and have everything be on my shoulders again, because I've lived alone a few times in my 20s. I've had my own apartments, but it was always so hard for me to make ends meet. It was so stressful, and I felt so kind of like alone in the world and vulnerable in a way. I was really afraid to put myself in that position again. And yet I knew I had to trust. I'm like, okay, I've done it before. I can do it again. Now I have God. I know that I'm not alone. I could do it. So I thought, even still, when I moved here, I figured surely there's going to be a catch. And the story of this house, by the way, is that it's owned by this woman who's a Christian, and she knew that I needed help, and she's not using this house. She's not living here. And she's not asking anything of me to live here. I mean, I guess just keep it clean, but that's something I would do anyway. Of course, I would want to be a good steward of this space. It's a miracle that I'm here, and I literally, I never forget that even for 1 second, because I know what it's like to struggle to pay the rent, to struggle to pay the bills, to live in an apartment with annoying roommates, I know what that's like. So to just be here at peace, like at first, that took a little bit of adjusting for me too. If you go back and watch the video about being the odd one out, stalked by a saint, the dark night of the soul, it was like right after Christmas or right after Thanksgiving, somewhere in that time period. I was like, okay, maybe I should just abandon this miraculous situation and move back to New York City, where it's hard and expensive and stinky and loud. Like, maybe I should just go back to that, because that's what I'm used to. And here it's peaceful and calm and quiet, and I don't have any stress attached to being here. And I didn't know how to like make sense of that. I'm like, no, things have to be hard and challenging, and I have to be like suffering and struggling, obviously. So even that took me a little bit of adjusting, and now I'm like, okay, I very much don't take it for granted, but I've come to realize, when I realized that this year is a Jubilee year, which happens only once every 25 years in the Catholic Church, and it's meant to be a year of rest, that's when it kind of clicked for me as to why God placed me here. And then when I had attended the first Latin Mass here, which wasn't available anywhere where I was living before, so that's why I didn't go to it previously, then I understood maybe why he put me here. And he's also placed another person in my life who really, I think, does a very commendable job of showing me the love of Christ and being there for me even when I'm not the easiest person to be there for. And I'm kind of receiving a little bit of clarity on that, even that this person is even an example to me, and somebody who's also been placed in my life for a reason that I've tried to push away, because again, I'm not used to that. It's not that I've never been treated well. I have, but there's always been a catch, or there's always been something required of me, or it was because of maybe how I made someone look or how I made them feel, but it wasn't about me as a person. So whenever somebody shows that kind of kindness and love towards me, especially if it's a man, I instinctively do everything I can to scare them away and to push them away. Because I have experienced in the past, honestly, and I don't know how this is going to sound, but this is just like my honest experience. I feel like some women out there can relate, because it's kind of taboo to talk about, but I always felt kind of weird growing up, because when I was a kid, early on, I lived in more low income areas and I was the only white girl. So I was kind of, well, I'm Hispanic, but I'm also white. So obviously the Hispanic kids didn't accept me as being Hispanic. So I experienced being a minority in my like very early formative years. And so that made me feel kind of different. And then I'm also very fair skinned, and I grew up in New Jersey, where the beauty standard is kind of being tan and like Italian. So I didn't like see myself maybe how other people might see me, basically. So anyway, now as an adult, I have experienced men assuming I'll be a certain way. Maybe I'm their physical type or whatever it is. And then when it turns out that I'm actually a human being and I have flaws and I have quirks and I have problems like everybody else, obviously, they dip, you know? So it reminds me of that quote from Rita Hayworth is, they go to bed with Gilda, but they wake up with me, because she played that like stunning character Gilda, but that wasn't what she was like in real life. And that's why I've always been so fascinated with Marilyn Monroe's story too, because she was totally misunderstood and just, yeah, I'm sure like in her marriages, that was kind of a thing too. People wanting to be married to Marilyn, but not really understanding what the reality of being with Marilyn would be like. So I've gotten to a point now anyway, not putting myself on those women's level like at all, but it's just this has just been my experience, especially like living in New York City when I was, 18, 19, 20, in my 20s, whatever, and experiencing being catcalled and followed and assaulted and worse. It makes you really on guard towards people paying attention to you because it triggers danger in your mind then at that point. So it's been like a lot of psychological knots that I've had to work through just from being a woman in the world. Like I'm sure, girls out there, you're listening, and I know like a lot of you can relate to this, and we're not really allowed to talk about it. Really? So I don't know. But anyway, now I find that when somebody comes into my life and they are genuinely kind, they are genuinely good-hearted, they genuinely care about my well-being, and they don't expect anything in return, I don't trust that. So it's taken me a long time to even give this person a chance and to like see their character for what it really is, which is something that is very rare and something that is very admirable and is genuine, because I've been sniffing it out for like over a year and not really trusting it. And it's examples like that make it very clear that God is trying to highlight something to me. So I've just been having a lot of realizations and clarity about, well, also confronting the things that I think as my default secular worldly programming versus Christian thought. There's a lot of things that you have to kind of confront that will come up in you as somebody who was raised secular and is now a Christian. There's a lot of things that will come up in which you have to discern what is what. And I've been learning a lot about that too. So I've just, yeah, and since the last update where I've really like sat down and kind of opened up to you guys, a lot has been coming to light for me, and I still don't know where God is leading me. I still don't know exactly what his plan is for me. But at least for now, and I still say that, right? At least for now, because I'm like, I don't know. Things are good, and I feel peace, and I feel very loved and taken care of, and I feel like I don't have to worry. And that's what God has been trying to illustrate and highlight to me for the whole time that I've been here, and I haven't really been able to digest it until kind of like today, which is why I'm a little emotional about it today, because it's just now kind of sinking in like what's going on, because I haven't really understood. Because yeah, when you come from maybe a challenging background, and I mean I've never gotten therapy for it, so like I don't know. You always have to be aware that you might be perceiving a situation in a way that is not entirely accurate, but your brain wants to keep you safe and wants to avoid those patterns that have really hurt you from happening again. So it's just been really interesting to try and just place that at the foot of the cross and be like, you know what, God, I clearly am not able to discern these things on my own without you. Like I'm literally not able. Obviously, if I look at my past choices, I can see that. So I've just kind of let go from putting all this pressure on myself to really follow this specifically laid out plan that I've constructed myself. Like I've completely just laid that down. And ever since I've done that, I have just been tremendously blessed, to an extent where it is humbling, to an extent where it's almost a little bit confusing, to an extent where I feel called to share this with you, not to inspire envy or jealousy or anything like that, because this isn't me. I didn't do any of this. It has nothing to do with me. That's the point. I'm inspired to share this with you in hopes that it encourages you that if you're on the fence but you're being called, I highly recommend giving your life to Christ. You have nothing to lose. You only have everything to gain, and not in a worldly sense, but for whatever reason, I have been blessed with more abundance because I am following Christ, which is not what I expected. It's not what I expect going forward. I don't believe in this whole prosperity gospel thing, follow Jesus and you'll get everything you want. I don't believe in that. So that's why I'm like, what's going on? I don't practice that. So I don't know. I don't know. But like I said, I get clarity when I spend time with God. When I ask him, why is he doing this for me? It's because he knows that I will speak. And I will never know how many people or which person, you are that might be watching this that really maybe needed to hear something that came through me today. But obviously it's making some kind of impact because the comments that you guys leave for me are just so, I don't know, they're just beyond my comprehension. I mean, I kind of see this as like, oh, who really cares what I have to say? Like, especially sitting down to make a video like this where it's basically just a little life update. I don't even know what I'm going to title it yet. I don't know who's going to even really care, but I just feel compelled because I know the other times that I get this feeling of like, okay, I should sit down and I should speak. Somebody has left a comment like, oh, because of this video, I've stopped doing drugs. Because of this video, I started going back to mass. Oh, because of this video, I'm praying the rosary. I'm following Jesus Christ. I'm changing my life around. I'm sober. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm like, huh? So it literally, I am literally just the vessel. I am just being used as an instrument. And that is actually so freeing because even when I'm out in the world now, I have so much of an easier time connecting with people and like chatting with strangers than I used to. Because given the little bit of background I just gave you, right? I usually would kind of be out in the world a little bit guarded, a little bit reserved. Like I didn't really want to talk to people. I didn't want people to talk to me. And lately, like I've been out and about and first of all, I noticed people are coming up to me, like women, and we're having such good conversations. And I don't know what's drawing that. I think there's just an openness now that I have because it's Christ. It's literally the love of Christ shining through me. And when I interact with, I don't know, baristas or people working in stores or waiters or waitresses, I can't help but give them a compliment, like a sincere compliment, something that comes upon my mind of noticing how kind they are, noticing how patient they are, noticing their cute outfit, noticing their beautiful hair, whatever. I can't help but say that now. And to notice people's like the way they light up it's so sweet. And also, again, it's literally, it could only be Christ because I'm not naturally like that. I'm more reserved and more shy. But I've just come to realize that if you are out in the world and you think something positive about another person, especially if it's a stranger actually, you should just say it. There's nothing to lose. It can only brighten their day. The worst thing that could happen is like it's a little awkward or they're a little shy about it. That's the worst thing that could happen. But something like that could make somebody's day. I know that because of how many public facing jobs I've worked in. When someone actually said something really nice and sweet about maybe the service I was providing or the outfit I was wearing or my makeup that day or whatever, it totally boosted my whole mood and like changed my whole day. So I kind of like can't help doing that now, and it's just like a little fun. I don't know, I feel like my whole perspective has changed in terms of people because I mean I do see every interaction with everybody I come across as an opportunity to show them the love of Christ. And that's really not something that I'm consciously doing. I'm just letting him come through, basically. So now it's totally different. And I actually would say, too, that embracing a more modest wardrobe and way of presenting myself makes me also feel more comfortable because I feel less exposed. And so that's kind of helps heal that part of me that, I don't know, feels like if I was to dress in a kind of overly seductive sort of way, that actually makes me feel unsafe. So I don't even want to do that, but I've learned now how good it feels to just be kind of covered, and more than that, it's made getting dressed more fun for me, and it's made fashion more fun for me. So my message for you today is give your life to Christ. It is beyond worth it. I think even if I wasn't being blessed in this way, I would still very much feel like that, because the peace that I have is otherworldly. The ability that He has given me to be kind and loving when otherwise I would not be is not of me. It could only be Him. And the fruits of the Spirit that He's been working on in me are very noticeable. And I mean, yeah, I really tried everything and nothing could touch what He can do. So that's kind of the message of this video. And I hope that it inspired you and encouraged you. If you're in a place right now where things are looking a little bit dark, or you're just not sure, things are uncertain, I feel you. And I hope that just sharing my story here can give someone out there a little bit of hope, a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of pep in their step. I hope it inspires you to maybe after this video, go sit down and pray. Just go talk to God. Go listen to what He has for you specifically. I mean, I think you can never go wrong with doing that. I would encourage you to do that, because I assume there's a reason He inspired you to click on this video, especially if for some reason this is the first video of mine you've ever seen. He might be calling you. So yeah, I think that's all for me today. Thank you for listening and watching. As always, please feel free to weigh in the comments any thoughts or feelings that are coming up for you after listening or watching this video. I always love hearing from you guys. I think I always say this in every video, but I really mean it. I think you guys are really cool for being here, for sticking around, for being interested in these kind of topics, for trying to live a truly good and faithful life. I think that's amazing. So yeah. That is all for today. We will see where the road will lead. I really don't know. I don't know where things are going, but the spring for me is always a really interesting time of change. So I'm just trying to ride that wave and be open and be grounded at the same time. I hope if you're watching this in real time that you're having a really beautiful Lent, and that your intentions that you set for the Lenten season, I hope that you're sticking to them. And if you're not, I encourage you to just get back on the horse. It's never too late. So yeah, thanks again, and I will catch you in the next one.